Welcome to our deep dive today, all about generative adversarial networks.
GANs.
GANs. Yeah, exactly.
Buckle up.
We're going to explore AI that can create things. And not just like copy and paste, right?
No, not at all.
You're prepping for a big meeting on this, so
Right.
we want to make sure you've got the need-to-know info
You got it.
to really impress.
Okay, so what's fascinating about GANs is they don't just mimic.
Right.
They learn the underlying patterns
Yeah.
in data, images, music, you name it,
Wow.
and use that knowledge to generate something totally new.
So it's more like understanding like the essence of what it's been trained on,
Yeah.
and then like coming up with its own variations.
Yeah.
We've got excerpts from a recent research paper
Okay.
breaking down how GANs work,
Read.
visuals,
Awesome.
and even some wild examples of what they can create.
Oh, cool.
Like satellite images,
Uh-huh.
artwork, even zebra horses.
I love it. We'll get to that. Okay, so first, let's demystify this whole like 2 AI thing.
Yes.
That makes GANs so special.
Let's unpack that.
Okay.
So from what I've read, every GAN has two competing networks, right?
That's right.
The generator
Uh-huh.
and the discriminator.
Yeah, it's like an AI battle royale.
Totally.
So think of the generator as the artist
Okay.
or the forger. It's all about creating new data that looks as real as possible.
Gotcha.
And the discriminator, that's the detective,
Okay.
constantly trying to figure out if what it's seeing is the real deal or a clever fake.
So it's this constant back and forth.
Yeah.
The generator's trying to fool the discriminator.
Uh-huh.
Discriminator's getting better at spotting those fakes.
Yeah,
Does that push both of them to improve over time?
absolutely.
Yeah.
The generator gets feedback on what tricked the discriminator, and the discriminator learns from its mistakes,
Right.
getting better at sniffing out the forgeries.
Gotcha.
This arms race drives both networks to become more and more sophisticated.
Okay, so we've got these two AIs in a constant duel,
Uh-huh.
but how does it actually work?
Right.
Is it all like super complicated algorithms and code?
Well, the basic process is surprisingly intuitive.
Really?
Imagine you start with random noise,
Oh,
like the static on a TV screen.
Uh,
The generator takes this noise
okay.
and tries to transform it into something meaningful.
Okay.
An image, for instance.
So it's like turning gibberish into art.
In a way, yes.
Wow.
It uses what it's learned during training
Uh-huh.
to translate that noise into something that resembles the data it's been fed.
Okay.
And then this generated data is shown to the discriminator,
Right.
along with real data from a training set.
Okay, so the discriminator's job is to play real or fake,
Exactly.
like a high-stakes game of
Mhm.
spot the difference.
Yes, spot on.
So that feedback is crucial
It is.
because it tells the generator how convincing its creations are.
Yeah, it's like a scorecard for how well it's doing in this AI forgery competition.
The better the generator gets at creating convincing fakes,
Right.
the harder the discriminator has to work to spot them, and vice versa. It's a continuous loop of improvement.
Yes.
As they train together, both networks get better,
Uh-huh.
and the outputs from the generator become increasingly realistic.
More and more realistic.
Now, I know from our research that there's a whole mathematical formula
Right.
behind all of this.
Yeah.
Do we need to get into the nitty-gritty of the math to understand how it works?
The formula itself is quite complex.
Okay.
But the key takeaway for you
Yeah.
is that it's not about simple copying.
Okay.
The creators of GANs described it as a minimax game.
Minimax.
It's like a seesaw.
Okay.
The generator tries to minimize its chances of being caught,
Wow.
while the discriminator works to maximize its ability to detect fakes.
So each AI is pushing the other to its limits, constantly raising the bar.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so this is where things get really interesting and maybe a little unnerving.
Right.
Let's talk about deep fakes.
Okay.
I know you're prepped on this,
Yes.
but our listener might not be.
Okay, sure.
Deep fakes are a great example of how powerful and potentially dangerous GANs can be.
Definitely.
They use these same principles to generate images and videos
Uh-huh.
that look incredibly real.
Yes.
Even though they're completely fabricated,
Right.
we've got a figure in our sources that shows how this works.
Oh, cool.
It's wild. You can see how a GAN can take a real image
Mm-hmm.
and swap faces seamlessly,
Yeah.
making it look like someone is saying or doing things they never did.
Right, and that's where the ethical considerations come in.
Of course.
GANs have enormous potential for good,
Right.
like generating realistic medical images for training doctors.
Right.
But in the wrong hands, they can be used to spread misinformation
Yeah.
and create fake news that's incredibly convincing.
Right. So it's like any powerful tool.
Yeah.
It all comes down to how it's used.
It does.
But this definitely highlights why understanding GANs is so important these days.
Absolutely. And it's not just deepfakes.
Okay.
The field has exploded in recent years, leading to a ton of different types of GANs, each with its own strengths and quirks.
Okay.
In fact, we've got a table in our sources that's just overflowing with different GAN variations
Yeah.
and what they do.
It can get a little overwhelming.
For sure.
So it's not just one size fits all.
Right.
It's a whole family of GANs,
It is.
each with its own specialty.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm starting to get a handle on this.
Good.
We've got the dueling AIs,
Yes.
the realistic creations, even the potential downsides.
Right.
But let's face it, training these things can't be easy, right?
You're right. It's not a walk in the park.
No.
There are some key challenges that researchers are still grappling with.
Okay.
The research paper you shared highlights a few of them.
Uh-huh.
Things like convergence failure, vanishing gradients, and mode collapse.
Those sound like they could be titles for sci-fi movies.
I know, right?
Can you break those down for us?
Sure, let's start with convergence failure.
Okay.
It's like the AI getting stuck in a rut, unable to improve its performance,
Okay.
no matter how much it trains.
Yeah. Imagine you're trying to teach a dog a new trick,
Okay.
but it just keeps doing the same old thing.
Right, so it's like the GAN is hitting a wall and can't get any better.
Exactly.
Okay, what about vanishing gradients?
Okay.
That one sounds a bit ominous.
Think of it like a signal getting weaker the deeper it travels.
Okay.
Almost like a whisper fading down a long hallway.
Okay.
That's what happens with vanishing gradients.
Nah.
Information gets lost as it moves through the layers of the neural network,
Okay.
making it hard for the GAN to learn effectively.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's like the deeper you go into the network, the harder it is to hear the message,
Yeah.
making it difficult to learn effectively.
Exactly.
What about mode collapse?
Okay.
I remember seeing some strange visuals in the paper that seemed to illustrate this problem. Like,
Yeah. Mode collapse is like our artistic AI getting stuck in a creative rut,
Okay.
only able to create one type of image, even when we ask for variety.
Remember those figure-8 drawings from the paper
Oh, yeah?
where all the eights looked almost identical?
Yeah, it was like the Gen had only learned how to draw one specific style of 8
Right.
and couldn't break free from that.
Exactly.
So instead of a diverse range of outputs, it gets stuck in a very limited set of creations.
Yeah, like having a painter who can only paint one type of face no matter who they're trying to portray.
So these limitations are like major roadblocks in the Jan Highway.
They are.
Are these issues deal breakers?
Well,
Or are researchers finding ways to navigate around them?
thankfully, researchers aren't giving up.
Okay.
They're constantly developing new techniques and architectures to address these challenges head-on.
Okay.
For example, there's something called Wasserstein metrics.
Wasserstein metrics.
It's a bit technical,
Okay.
but basically it helps stabilize training and prevents the GAN from getting stuck in that convergence failure rut.
Okay, so why should you care about Wasserstein metrics?
Good question.
Because they help the Jan learn more effectively and produce better results.
Right.
It's like giving our AI artists better tools and a more stable studio environment.
Perfect.
Okay, but what about vanishing gradients?
Okay.
Is there a way to boost that fading signal?
Researchers have developed new activation functions,
Activation function.
which are like little booster stations within the network that amplify the signal and prevent it from fading away. One popular example is called ReLU,
Right, you.
which stands for Rectified Linear Unit.
Okay,
It's a fancy name.
gotcha.
But basically, it helps information flow more smoothly through the network.
So ReLU is like giving our signal a megaphone,
Yeah.
making sure the message gets through loud and clear.
I like it.
It's great. And what about that artistic rut problem?
Okay.
Mode collapse.
Mode collapse.
Are there any solutions on the horizon for that?
There are some promising approaches,
Okay.
like introducing a bit of randomness during training or tweaking the architecture to encourage more diversity. Think of it like giving our AI artist a wider range of brushes and paints to work with,
Right.
helping them break free from their creative constraints.
I like that. So we're giving our AI artists better tools, a more stable studio, and even a wider range of creative inspiration.
Exactly.
That's got to help them generate some amazing things.
Right.
But all this training requires a ton of data, right?
It does.
What are these GANs actually learning from?
You're right. Data is the fuel that powers these AI engines.
Okay.
And the datasets used to train GANs are incredibly diverse.
Okay.
Everything from simple handwriting to high-res photos, even medical images.
Whoa, that's a lot to digest.
Yeah.
Let's break that down a bit. What kind of data sets are we talking about?
Well, one classic dataset is MNIST,
MNIST.
which is basically a giant collection of handwritten digits.
Okay.
It's like the boot camp for training AI to recognize handwriting.
So that's for teaching AI the basics of recognizing patterns in human handwriting.
Yeah, that's right.
What about the more complex stuff, like recognizing objects in images?
For that, there's ImageNet,
ImageNet.
a massive data set with millions of images across thousands of categories.
Wow.
Think cats, dogs, cars, airplanes, basically anything you can imagine.
Okay.
It's like giving the GAN a crash course in visual recognition.
Okay, so ImageNet is like the encyclopedia for training GANs to recognize just about anything.
Yeah, pretty much.
But what if you need a GAN that's specialized in a particular type of image, like faces?
Then you'd use a dataset like
Celeba.
which is specifically designed for training GANs to generate and manipulate facial images.
Wow.
This dataset is especially important for applications like generating realistic avatars,
Right.
or unfortunately creating those deep fakes we talked about earlier.
Right, the double-edged sword of AI.
Exactly.
So we've got MNIST for handwriting,
Uh-huh.
ImageNet for general object recognition,
Yes,
and Celeba for faces.
that's right.
But what if you need a GAN that can work with medical images,
Okay.
like X-rays or MRI scans?
Right?
Are there data sets for that?
Absolutely. There are specialized data sets for medical images, which are used to train GANs for tasks like tumor detection, disease diagnosis, and even generating synthetic medical data for research.
Wow, so the types of data sets are as diverse as the applications themselves.
Yeah.
It's amazing to think that AI can learn from such a wide range of information.
Yeah. And that brings us to a crucial point.
Uh-huh.
The data sets used to train GANs play a huge role in their capabilities and limitations.
Right.
If a GAN is only trained on a limited data set, it might struggle to generate diverse and realistic outputs.
So garbage in, garbage out.
Basically.
Like if you train a GAN on a data set of only one type of image, it's not going to be very creative or versatile.
Exactly. The quality and diversity of the training data are critical for ensuring that GANs can generate truly impressive and useful results.
That's a good reminder that even the most powerful AI is still limited by the data it's given.
It is.
It's like a chef trying to create a gourmet meal with only a few basic ingredients.
Right.
It's not going to be their best work.
A perfect analogy.
Thanks.
The data is the foundation of everything.
Right.
And as we collect more and more diverse data, we can expect to see even more incredible things coming out of the world of GANs.
This is mind-blowing stuff.
I know.
We covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
The dueling AIs,
Uh-huh.
the realistic creations, the challenges, the data that fuels it all.
Right.
But where does it all go from here?
Okay.
How are GANs actually being used in the real world?
That's exactly what we'll explore in part 2 of this deep dive.
Okay.
Get ready to see how GANs are already being used in fields like cybersecurity, entertainment, and even healthcare.
Stay tuned because things are about to get even more interesting.
They are. Welcome back. So last time we established that GANs are powerful AI systems, right, with two key parts. The generator, our creative forger, and the discriminator, the detective who keeps the forger in check.
It was like stepping into an AI art studio watching these two networks battle it out
It was.
to create and detect increasingly realistic fakes.
Exactly. And remember we talked about how the generator keeps getting better at creating convincing fakes,
Uh-huh.
while the discriminator sharpens its detective skills to spot them.
Right.
Now, let's shift gears and explore how this fascinating technology is making waves in the real world.
Okay, so we skimmed over a few applications earlier.
Oh.
Everything from cybersecurity to generating those incredibly detailed 3D models for video games.
Right.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around how AI that creates fake images can actually help us stay safe online.
It might seem counterintuitive,
It does.
but think of it this way. A forger often knows how to spot a forgery better than anyone else.
Okay.
By training GANs on data that includes malicious content, things like images with hidden malware,
Uh-huh.
we can actually teach them to recognize and prevent similar attacks in the real world.
So you're saying these GANs are becoming like cybersecurity experts, constantly learning and evolving to stay ahead of the latest digital threats.
Whoa, that's a great way to put it. They're like digital antibodies, adapting and evolving to fight off new and emerging viruses. And it's not just about detecting threats. GANs can also be used to generate synthetic data for training other cybersecurity systems.
Ah, so they're not just on the front lines. They're helping train the entire cybersecurity army.
Exactly.
The more diverse the training data, the better prepared these systems will be to handle real-world attacks, right?
Exactly. Now let's step out of the cybersecurity war room and into something a bit more fun, the world of entertainment.
Okay.
Remember we talked about how GANs can be used to generate 3D models?
Yeah, and you mentioned composing music, right?
Yes. Yes.
Like, could you feed a Jan all of Beethoven's compositions and have it create a lost symphony?
You could.
That sounds like something out of a movie.
That's right. GANs can analyze patterns in music and generate new melodies, harmonies, even entire songs in a particular style.
Wow.
It's not quite the same as having Beethoven back in the studio,
Right.
but it's pushing the boundaries of what AI can do with music.
So you might not get a true masterpiece,
Yeah.
but you could get something that captures the essence of a particular composer or genre.
Yeah.
Still pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah.
What about those video games we talked about?
Sure.
How are GANs being used there?
Think about the massive, incredibly detailed worlds in some of today's video games.
Uh-huh.
Creating those environments takes a lot of time and effort from talented artists.
Yeah, it does.
But GANs can step in and help create realistic landscapes, characters, even entire levels.
So instead of having a team of artists spend months meticulously crafting every detail of a virtual world, you could have a GAN do a lot of the heavy lifting,
Right.
freeing up human artists to focus on the more creative aspects of game design.
Exactly. It's like having an AI assistant who can handle some of the more tedious tasks, allowing human creativity to flourish.
That's pretty cool.
Now, we've talked about cybersecurity and entertainment,
Uh-huh.
but we can't forget about the healthcare industry.
Right, of course.
We briefly mentioned tumor detection and drug discovery, and I'm really curious to hear more about that.
Yeah, those are some pretty high-stakes applications. From what I understand, GANs could have a huge impact in healthcare.
Yep.
But there are also some important ethical considerations to think about.
You're absolutely right. Imagine training a GAN on thousands upon thousands of medical images,
Okay.
teaching it to spot those tiny, subtle anomalies that even a trained human eye might miss.
Yeah,
It's like having an AI-powered radiologist who never gets tired or needs a coffee break.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
So it's not replacing doctors, but it's giving them an incredibly powerful tool to help them diagnose diseases more accurately and earlier.
Exactly, and it goes beyond just detection.
Okay.
GANs could be used to personalize treatment plans for individual patients,
Wow.
predict how they might respond to different therapies,
Uh-huh.
even generate synthetic medical data to protect patient privacy while still allowing researchers to make groundbreaking discoveries.
It sounds like GANs are taking personalized medicine to a whole new level.
They are. And what about drug discovery?
Oh, yeah. You said that AI could actually be involved in designing the next generation of life-saving medications.
It's not science fiction. Remember how we talked about GANs learning patterns from data? Well, they can also be used to model the incredibly complex structures of molecules
Okay.
and simulate how different compounds might interact with the human body.
So instead of researchers spending years in the lab testing millions of different combinations, a GAN can help narrow down the possibilities
Yes.
and accelerate the discovery of new drugs.
Precisely. It's like having an AI-powered research assistant who can work tirelessly around the clock,
Right.
exploring potential drug candidates and identifying the most promising ones for further development.
So GANs are helping us diagnose diseases earlier, personalized treatments, and even develop new life-saving medications. It's truly incredible.
It is, but I know you're big on looking at things from multiple perspectives.
I try to be.
We've talked about the potential benefits, but what about the limitations?
Okay, yeah, good point.
Are those challenges we talked about earlier still a major hurdle?
Yeah, those sci-fi movie titles are hard to forget.
I know.
They sound like pretty significant roadblocks.
Yeah.
Are there any promising solutions on the horizon?
Absolutely. Researchers are developing new architectural modifications, regularization techniques, even using different mathematical frameworks to tackle these challenges.
Wow.
It's a rapidly evolving field,
Right.
and there's a lot of excitement around some of the latest advancements.
Okay, I get that it's pretty technical,
Uh-huh.
but can you give us a simplified idea of what these solutions are trying to achieve?
Imagine you're trying to train a puppy that's easily distracted and tends to go off on tangents.
Okay,
That's kind of what GAN training can be like.
gotcha.
These new techniques are like giving that puppy a better leash, a clear set of commands,
Okay.
and a more engaging training regimen.
So it's like we're becoming better dog trainers, but for AIs.
Exactly. We're developing better tools and techniques to guide GANs towards producing more diverse, higher quality outputs.
Right.
As we get better at training them, we unlock more and more of their potential.
Okay, so we've covered the good, the bad, and the technically challenging.
Uh-huh.
I think our listener is starting to get a pretty well-rounded view of the GAN landscape.
Good.
But I want to revisit something you said earlier about GANs representing a fundamental shift in AI's capabilities. Can you unpack that a bit more?
Of course, for a long time, AI has been primarily focused on analyzing and understanding existing data, things like recognizing patterns, making predictions, that sort of thing.
Right.
But GANs are changing the game.
Okay.
They're enabling AI to actively create new data, not just analyze what's already there.
So it's not just about recognizing a cat in a photo anymore.
Right.
It's about using that knowledge to generate an entirely new, realistic image of a cat that never existed before.
Exactly. It's a huge leap forward.
Wow.
And this ability to create has profound implications for how we approach problem solving, create art, and even interact with the world around us.
That sounds like a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Do you have any examples of how this creative AI is already changing things?
Well, in the art world, we're seeing GANs being used to generate unique pieces that are blurring the lines between human and machine creativity. Remember we mentioned that portrait that sold at Christie's auction house for a hefty sum?
Oh, yeah, that was created by a GAN, right?
It was.
And it sparked all sorts of debates about what constitutes art and who can be considered an artist.
Exactly. It's a fascinating example of how AI is challenging our traditional notions of art and creativity.
It really is.
And it's not just visual art. GANs are being used to compose music, write poetry, even generate realistic dialogue for chatbots.
It's making me rethink what we consider creative and who or what can be considered a creator.
I know, it's fascinating.
But what about outside the creative arts? Are there more practical, real-world examples of how this shift is impacting things?
Absolutely. Think about fields like design and engineering.
Okay.
GANs could be used to generate new product designs, optimize architectural plans, even discover new materials with specific properties.
Wow, so instead of just analyzing existing designs,
Yeah.
GANs can actually contribute to the creative process.
Yes.
Coming up with completely new ideas and solutions.
Exactly. It's like having an AI partner who can not only analyze your work,
But also offer suggestions and come up with new and innovative ideas.
That's amazing.
It's a whole new level of collaboration between humans and machines.
This is seriously mind-blowing, and I have a feeling we've only just scratched the surface of what GANs can do.
You're right, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
Yeah, we have.
But there's still so much more to explore.
Okay.
In part 3, we'll delve into some of the more speculative, even futuristic possibilities of GANs.
Okay.
Things that might sound like they're straight out of a sci-fi novel.
Oh, I'm definitely intrigued. Sounds like things are about to get really wild.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of GANs.
Oh.
So far, we've explored like the inner workings of these dueling neural networks, right?
We have.
We've seen how they're already like shaking things up in fields like cybersecurity and healthcare.
Yeah.
And even glimpsed their potential to redefine what it means to be creative.
It's pretty amazing.
And now we're stepping into the realm of speculation.
Okay.
A glimpse into the future,
Right.
where GANs could like reshape everything. Yeah. From how we learn to how we address global challenges.
I'm excited.
Okay, so last time,
Yeah.
you hinted at some pretty wild possibilities.
I did.
Things that sounded like they were straight out of a science fiction movie.
Okay, well, let's start with something close to home, the future of education.
No.
Imagine a world where instead of a one-size-fits-all approach, each student gets a personalized learning experience tailored to their unique needs and abilities.
Okay, so no more cookie-cutter classrooms.
No more.
You're talking about a world where every student gets a custom-designed educational journey.
Exactly. Remember how we talked about GANs learning patterns from data? They could analyze a student's learning style, strengths, weaknesses, even their emotional state.
Wow.
And then generate customized content exercises, even virtual tutors that adapt in real time to their progress.
It's like having an AI tutor who knows exactly how you learn best.
Right.
And can push you at just the right pace without ever getting impatient or frustrated.
Precisely, this could revolutionize how we educate future generations,
Yeah.
making learning more engaging, efficient, and accessible to everyone, regardless of their background or learning differences.
That's a future I can definitely get behind. But let's zoom out from the individual level for a minute and think bigger picture.
Okay.
You also mentioned something about simulating entire ecosystems.
I did.
Now that sounds ambitious.
It is ambitious, but the
Oh.
potential is incredible.
So we're talking about creating virtual worlds,
Yes,
digital twins of real-world ecosystems.
that's right.
What could we do with that kind of power?
Imagine being able to run simulations testing the impact of deforestation on a rainforest
Uh-huh.
or rising sea levels on a coastal city.
Wow.
We could gain a deeper understanding of how these systems function,
Yeah.
identify potential tipping points,
Right.
and explore different strategies for mitigating environmental damage.
That sounds incredibly valuable.
It is
It's like having a virtual lab where you can experiment with different scenarios and see the potential consequences before they happen in the real world.
exactly. And remember, we talked about GANs learning patterns from data.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they could also be used to analyze massive data sets of climate data,
Right.
identify trends,
Yeah.
and help us make more accurate predictions about the future of our planet.
So instead of just reacting to climate change as it happens, we could use GANs to get ahead of the curve and develop proactive solutions.
That's the idea, but how could GANs actually help us reverse the damage that's already been done?
Right. That's a good question.
It's still early days, but researchers are exploring some really fascinating possibilities.
Okay.
For example, GANs could be used to optimize renewable energy systems,
Hi.
making them more efficient and cost-effective.
Gotcha.
They could also be used to design new materials that are more sustainable and eco-friendly.
So it's not just about understanding the problem, it's about using AI to actively design and develop solutions that can help us transition to a more sustainable future.
That's the ultimate goal, and there's even research exploring how GANs could be used in carbon capture technologies,
Wow.
pulling carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and storing it safely.
That's incredible.
It's a complex challenge, but GANs could potentially accelerate our progress in this critical area.
Okay, so we've gone from personalized education to simulating ecosystems to tackling climate change.
Uh-huh.
It's starting to feel like GANs have the potential to solve just about any problem we throw at them.
Well, let's not get carried away just yet.
Okay.
Remember, GANs are tools, and like any tool, their impact depends entirely on how we choose to use them.
That's true.
There are still technical challenges to overcome,
Right.
ethical considerations to address,
Of course.
and potential consequences we need to be mindful of.
That's a really good point. Just because we can do something doesn't mean we need to approach these advancements with both enthusiasm and caution,
I agree.
carefully considering the potential benefits and risks.
Absolutely. But it's also important to acknowledge the incredible potential of this technology. GANs are a testament to human ingenuity and creativity, and they hold the promise of transforming countless aspects of our lives.
I think our listeners are starting to get a sense of that.
Mhm.
We've taken them on a journey from the fundamental principles of GANs to their real-world applications,
Yeah.
and even explored those mind-bending possibilities that lie just beyond the horizon.
It's been a true deep dive, and I hope our listener is walking away with a deeper understanding of this fascinating and rapidly evolving field.
It's been an incredible journey, and it leaves me both excited and a bit humbled by the power of human ingenuity. Who knows what incredible breakthroughs are just around the corner.
That's the beauty of it. The future is full of possibilities, and GANs are just one of the many exciting tools we have at our disposal to shape that future.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you've enjoyed the journey as much as we have.